Welcome to the Buddhistisches Tor Berlin podcast. Here we share talks and reflections from our Buddhist center in Berlin, exploring themes such as meditation, ethics, and the path of awakening in everyday life. We are part of the Triratna Buddhist community, and our talks are offered freely in a spirit of generosity. We hope this episode supports your practice and your life.
Very warm welcome. Normally at this stage we talk about the Dharma, the Buddhist teachings quite a lot, but I thought because on Monday we have one of our festival days, and this time we're not celebrating within the Buddhist tradition, but we're going to celebrate our own special tradition. I thought it could be really nice just to give you a little bit of an overview where you have come to and who we are at this Buddhist center, what makes us, sort of. So on Monday would have been the founding day of our Buddhist movement in 1967. So that's quite a long time ago. I was born already, I was 2, I don't know, probably most of you weren't born then. But then the next year, something quite important on the 7th of April happened, and our order was founded. So at the heart of this Buddhist movement is an order of really committed people who are sort of like practicing together. They are a spiritual community. So in this talk, I would love to just tell you a little bit about these beginnings of our movement, but also of our order. And then I'm going to say a few words about Sanghadarshini, just a little bit. There's a little picture of him there when he was in his probably early 20s, mid-20s, living in India. He's now dead. He died a few years ago. And then I thought I'd tell you just a little bit about my own way, how I got on this spiritual path and came into the order. Probably other people would tell a totally different story, but I think it's quite nice just to give you an idea of what happened and why, why I got into this spiritual community, into this order. But I thought I'd just start with Sanghadarshini. So he was an Englishman born in 1925. And at the age of 16, without much Buddhism around, he realized that he was a Buddhist. He just read a few texts which were quite deep. I don't understand them. But when he read them, he realized that he was a Buddhist. And by chance, how these things sometimes happen, during the Second World War, he had to go to the army and they were stationed in India. So at the end of the war, he deserted the army and he just stayed in India. I mean, what a thing. He could have gone to France, he could have gone anywhere, but they went to India. And there he was then ordained in 1950 at the age of 25 as a Buddhist monk. And he ended up living in the northeast of India in a place called Kalimpong, which was just where a lot of Tibetans would flee from the Chinese occupation a few years later. So he was just at that moment again, right at the right place where he had contact with quite a lot of Tibetan lamas. Some of them very influential, not only for him, but now also for Buddhism worldwide. And during that time, he became well known for a non-sectarian approach of Buddhism. So in Buddhism, one could say a lot, but it's normally the different Buddhist groups can be very different. I don't know if you've been to a Zen center, a Tibetan center, sometimes really hard to recognize what brings them together. But he had a very strong impetus to look at the whole of the Buddhist tradition and take inspiration from that. So he stayed there for about 20 years, and at some stage, in Britain, the Buddhist communities there invited him to come back to the UK, which he did in the mid-60s. That's a whole story in itself. But what happened there, it was a total mixture of people. So some people were more interested in Buddhism on a philosophical level. So they had these nice philosophical schools coming together. But then there was also the mid-60s, this whole hippie movement of young people becoming really interesting in consciousness and sort of like drugs and, you know, the Beatles. And yeah, it was just a very amazing time. So he was just coming back to the UK with this total mixture of people who were coming there, some in their early 20s, even like late teens, and then some people who were in the 60s, 70s, you know, just interesting on a philosophical level. But he realized that if Buddhism is going to come to the West, and he's probably been one of the earliest people there, it has to be communicated in a way which works for Westerners. Yeah, so a lot of Buddhism comes with the whole culture and tradition of these different countries where Buddhism has set. So his thing was, how can I go back to the principles which are free from the culture and just see what's lying underneath, which is actually valuable for all. Yeah, so what are the principles and how could he best apply them to this Western context? And he realized that it needed, in some ways, a new Buddhist movement. So in 1967, at the age of 41, he started teaching in a small basement in a Japanese shop. He started teaching Buddhism and meditation. So in some ways, this Buddhist center has started in a very small place at somebody's living home. And yeah, so it's very interesting how things start. And it's said that the room was 12 square meters. So it's probably up to here and then maybe to Costa, you know, the room. It wasn't very big. And they were probably crammed in there like this. And I found a nice description by Vajragupta, who wrote a biography of Sanghadarshini, and it says, "It's a spring evening in central London in 1967. Along a narrow road of antique and oriental shops, one is named Monmouth Street. On the left-hand side, at the far end of the road, there's a small shop named Sakura, Japanese for cherry blossom. Down the stairs at the bottom are two small rooms. As your eyes get used to the light, you see that there are about a dozen people crammed into the tiny space. Most are sitting on chairs, but a few sit on cushions on the floor. Midway along the back wall is a shrine with candles burning, a vase of flowers, and a small figure of the Buddha. Not as big as ours, maybe this, yeah. There's one man in particular who grabs your attention. He's an Englishman in his early 40s, but of unusual appearance. He's wearing orange robes over a thick jumper. He has longish brown hair and spectacles. But it is his presence that really makes you pay heed. He seems utterly alert, confident, at ease in himself. The look in his eye and the set of his mouth are formidably serious and intent, except that sometimes he catches someone else's eye and breaks into a toothy grin. After a quick check of his watch, he faces the shrine and in a deep voice chants and bows to the Buddha, the others following this lead, as we did at the beginning. He then sits on a low platform and explains to them about Buddhist meditation. He speaks slowly, choosing and emphasizing his words carefully, but with that same underlying intensity and conviction. The people present are fascinated, and after the few minutes of instruction, shuffle into the meditation posture and close their eyes. He begins the period of meditation by ringing a Japanese bowl. The room falls silent, while above, unseen, the red double-decker buses rumble by and the taxi cabs honk their horn. Quite like the description, yeah. So that was the very early beginning. And as I said before, 1 year later, the order was founded, and it was to be at the heart of this new Buddhist movement. So this is the Buddhist movement here, but at the heart of it, there is some people, there's quite a few of us here, who sort of like really their spiritual practice, their insights, their communication with one another, their harmony with one another, that's what's really attracting people to this Buddhist center. The first person to be ordained into the Western Buddhist Order was a woman called Sarah Boyne, which became Sujata. And it was on purpose that she, as a woman, was the first to be ordained. Together with her, about 11 men and women took the step to commit full-hearted to a Buddhist path. It was a very unusual day. Something very unusual happened. And it attracted a bit the attention of the newspapers, and I just thought I'd just give you some of the comments. The ordination conducted by the Venerable Stavira Sanghadarshini, head of the Buddhist monastic community in Britain, were set by the Stavira to be a historic stage in the development of Buddhism in the West. They took place before an invited audience in London, which included eminent Buddhists from Britain and many other parts of the world. In his talk on the meaning of the order, Sanghadarshini said that there were two extreme views regarding what constitutes a Buddhist. One maintained that only ordained monks were real Buddhists, and the other that being born in a Buddhist country automatically made one a Buddhist. The Friends, as we were called the Friends of the Western Buddhist Order at the time, took a middle view, avoiding the exclusiveness of the one extreme and the all-embracing character of the other. And Sanghadarshini said some years later in a talk, it was an order that was open to both men and women. In some quarters of the Buddhist East, it was regarded as rather revolutionary, not to say almost heretical, to accept both men and women into the same order on equal terms. So this has been a principle, one of our distinctive features from the very beginning. Today it looks like, why wouldn't we be, like ordained on the same level? But at that time, and Buddhism is quite a patriarchal it is very patriarchal. It was quite a step to have a woman first ordained and that men and women are ordained on equal terms. He also said, our new Buddhist movement would also have to be free from homophobia, as it came to be called, if spiritual friendship was to flourish within it. Indeed, it would have to be free from homophobia if it was to be truly Buddhist. And he said, Buddhism is a universal teaching, and as such, its attitude is one of goodwill, metta, towards all living beings, irrespective of race, nationality, social position, gender, or sexual orientation. So, this new order, this spiritual community, is neither monastic nor just a lay. It's open to both and men on equal terms, and it's open to all, irrespective of race, nationality, social position, gender, or sexual orientation. It's quite something, especially for the time then. And Sanghadarshini defined a spiritual community, which is sort of like what we call the order. It's quite a high level. A voluntary association of free individuals who have come together on account of a common commitment to a common ideal, a commitment to what we call the three jewels. I'll repeat that later again. Our order, so this Triratna Buddhist Order, which is at the heart of this community, is trying to be a spiritual community in this sense, a voluntary association of free individuals who have come together on account of a common commitment to a common ideal, a commitment to what we call the three jewels. So as order members, we are aspiring individuals who are trying to become more and more integrated, emotionally positive, independent of group values, freeing ourselves from unhelpful conditioning and thinking for ourselves. It's quite something. I mean, I could give a whole talk on this now, but to really become more in yourself an individual without becoming individualistic. And we are on a spiritual journey. The term is, I said it a few times, we are going for refuge to the three jewels. So the three jewels are the Buddha as an ideal, what we ourselves can aspire. The Dharma as all the teachings which help us on the way. And the Sangha is the spiritual community. So other people who have gone ahead of us, who have gained insight. And sometimes we call this gathering also a Sangha. So going for refuge, this turning towards the three jewels, is essentially a profound inner experience, a spiritual rebirth or conversion as a result of which one's whole life is transformed and reorientated. So it's not just a little hobby at the side, it's just like your whole life is sort of like turning there. And at the same time, we're coming together with other free individuals, co-creating with other individuals on the basis of our common values and our going for refuge to the three jewels. And that is not easy, it's a very high ideal. But for me, this ideal, the vision of a spiritual community is very much alive in me, even if I'm not always there myself. So to give you a little bit of a taste, I just thought I'd talk about my own experience towards ordination. So in 2007, I was invited, I get a little bit goosebumps myself, sorry, on my ordination retreat on a mountain in Spain, and I was going to spend 3 months there, together with 20 other women, of which 14 of us were going to be ordained. This place is called Akashavana, the forest of luminous space, and is far away from any civilization, away from mobile phones, laptops, Wi-Fi, and even other people. So it's really up on a mountain. At night, very far away, you can see a little bit of light of houses. So it's a very special place where we're going to spend 3 months together. It's a beautiful space, it's rough and rugged, but at the same time there's a benevolent spirit there. And I had prepared for this retreat over the last 7 years. On the outside, I had been studying the Dharma, the Buddhist teachings, at my local Buddhist center. I built up a regular meditation practice. I became more skillful in my ethical behavior. I had developed friendships with the order and others training for ordination. I lived in Buddhist communities, and I even worked for the Buddhist center in Essen. And over these years, I had grown as a person, became more independent in my thinking, and more independent from the different groups around me, like my family or status or work. I had loosened some of my views about life and loosened some restrictive conditionings and habits. I had gained more confidence in myself and the Buddhist practices, and I realized that some things won't be able to give me lasting satisfaction, which was quite sobering and painful at first. But I also found deeper meaning in things which went beyond me. A whole new world of meaning had opened up before me. And all these little steps over these 7 years had been witnessed by my friends in the order. So on this retreat up the mountain in Spain, there were women from the UK, Scotland, the Netherlands, Mexico, the United States, and me from Germany. So we had different backgrounds, were of different ages, we had different sexual orientations. Some were mums, some were grandmothers even, some lived in Buddhist communities, some with their partners, some on their own. Some had jobs in the world, and some worked in our Buddhist movement. So it was very interesting to see at the beginning, we were drawn to each other by the known. So maybe being of a similar age or sharing a language or by our lifestyle. So that was quite interesting. I knew one person, Fiona, she was actually quite a good friend. But I didn't know all the other ones, but sort of like how you gang together, with what is known. But for all of us, these 3 months were going to be a stepping into the unknown, a stepping out of familiarity, and a stepping into this Triratna Buddhist Order, which is still a mystery and in some ways unfathomable and unknown to me. A quote again from Sanghadarshini: you can't really commit yourself to something that you know. To commit yourself to the known is a contradiction in terms. You always commit yourself to the unknown. At least there's always an unknown element in that to which you commit yourself. Something to think about, yeah. So over the weeks, we all got to know each other. We shared our life stories. We studied the Dharma, the teachings. We spent days in silence, meditating together, doing rituals. We also worked together doing our daily chores like cooking, cleaning, fetching water from the well, chainsawing tree trunks, some of us did. And by living together, we rubbed up against each other and then we confessed. We rejoiced in each other's merits and we got to know each other and ourselves more in our depths and our heights. We lived the Dharma, a life of Buddhist practice together. And then after a few weeks, our private ordination was upon us, and this was very auspicious. Was a meeting of ourselves just with our private preceptor, the person who was going to ordain us. So over the years, I had built up a relationship with Kulanandi, who was going to be my preceptor. So she knew me, in all sorts of, we even lived together at some stage. She knew me in all sorts of ways. And she was the one who was going to ordain me. So this first part, this private ordination, is just one-to-one. It's in a secret place, which I didn't know where it would be. And the meaning of this ritual is that even if no one else in the world would do this step, I'm willing to go it alone. Yeah, so it's this individual decision where you have to step out and you go on this path on your own. So I went alone. I set out alone on the path, and it was just me and Kulanandi, my preceptor. And she had witnessed me over the journey of the previous year, and she had also witnessed my ethical behavior. So in some ways, she is the one who sort of like is going to give me a set of 10 precepts. Up till then, I had 5 precepts I tried to follow, or sort of like who I was following. And she felt confident that I was going for refuge effectively, which means that I can create conditions to effectively keep up my practice under most circumstances in my life. It's not about me becoming a perfect person, but it was about me being able to set up the conditions to keep up my practice in most circumstances. And she could also feel that I at least had a glimpse of something beyond, of something transcendental. So during that ritual, she gave me the 10 ethical precepts, a new meditation practice, and a new name. So she gave me the name Sanghadarshini, she who sees the spiritual community, she who has a vision of the spiritual community. And our order names express qualities, they express enlightened qualities we can grow into. So I'm aspiring to be Sanghadarshini. I'm not yet Sanghadarshini. But our names remind us daily of what we can become. I mean, what a gift. If somebody knows you really well and they see your qualities and they give you this name for something to grow into. And the others also went alone, meeting up just with their preceptor. All our life has led us to that point, a stepping into the unknown, a letting go of our old identity to be reborn into something new, which was expressed through our new names. What a moment. And probably for most order members, it's the most significant moment in their lives. But this ritual has 2 parts. So only a few days later, we were born into the order on our public ordination. So even if we were determined to go alone, even if nobody else in the world would go, at the public ordination, we found ourselves stepping into the order together with all these other new beings who had committed themselves individually and freely, and we were welcomed into the Triratna Buddhist Order. At the public ordination was this verse which still rings in my ear. Today my human life is bearing fruit. I am born into the Buddha family. I am a daughter of the Buddha. Now I will act in such a way that no disgrace will come to this spotless family. So a few days after we had been publicly ordained, I was sitting in the shrine room in Akashavana, looking at the other women, and I got a glimpse of what this order is about. And Sangharakshita's words did ring in my ear. A voluntary association of free individuals who have come together on account of a common commitment to a common ideal, a commitment to what we call the three jewels. So in some ways, what had drawn us together at the beginning of the retreat was not important anymore. We had all in some ways become so much more free and more of an individual, each with her distinctive qualities, expressed beautifully in our new names. We had all been witnessed to effectively go for refuge by our preceptor, but also by each other. And I cannot really explain what happened to me at that moment, but it felt really significant. It was like I had deep faith in something new. And yes, from the outside we looked like a group, all of us in blue clothes, some with shaven heads, chanting together, meditating together, working together, but something else was new. We could be ourselves, deeply ourselves, and we were connected on a deeply level with each other by committing ourselves to the truth, the beauty, the good, committing to the three jewels, each in her individual ways. There was no outside pressure to conform, even to be good, no wanting to receive appreciation. We were probably most of the time not wearing masks anymore, and we came together more naked, but still with our rough edges. And this was the order, this was an experience of the order which is still with me after all these years. It was a glimpse of what the order can be at its best. But it's not like this. I'm not always in these ideal conditions. In Berlin life, these conditions really have to be worked on. It's a practice. And I just will say a little bit more about this. So our Buddhist order is like a living organism, a living being, held together by our common going for refuge. It's a network of friendships who have to be worked on. So a few years ago, I gave a talk on a retreat where women were training to join the order. So we have these retreats for women. And at that time, so it's a few years ago, Pope Benedict became Pope, the German Pope. And in Germany, you could read all over the Bild Zeitung and everywhere, "We are Pope." I can't know if any of you still remember this. And on the retreat, I had the slogan, "We are order." And on that retreat, I reflected, without me, this order would not be the order. Each one of us brings their individual qualities. The order is not stagnant or a fixed thing, but held together by our going for refuge. And it is slightly changing shape with each new order member coming into the order. And as soon as I enter this order with my ordination, I'm a full member of the order. Yes, there will be people who have more experience, who I look up to, but in terms of responsibilities, I'm a full member of the order. And the responsibilities, this is quite interesting, they are not for running a Buddhist center. So some of us come here and we're supporting this Buddhist center, but that's not where our responsibility lies. But my responsibility lies with deepening my practice towards enlightenment, so setting up the conditions that I understand the Buddhist teachings on deeper and deeper levels and bring them into my life, and in creating harmony with my brothers and sisters in the order. So wherever people are coming together, there will be disharmony. So it's a real practice, at least on the level of the order, and then beyond that, to create harmony. You know, I live in a community with 6 other women, and I think we're great in creating harmony. What are we doing about that? You know, how are we forgiving the other person or confess to the other person? Or how do we live together? How do we create real harmony with one another? And then the third duty we have is to work for the welfare of all beings. And each one of us is doing that in slightly different way. As I said, some might work through here, teaching, but some, I don't know, with their family, or being a friend of mine worked in a bank. Yeah, so how would that look like, this commitment to working for the good of all beings? So in the order, there cannot be any worldly hierarchy or power structure. Maybe they exist for a Buddhist center like this, with legal responsibilities, but not within the order. And just to say, the order is not the end. That's also quite important. It's just the context from where we move from, as I said, this effective going for refuge, which is at the stage when we get ordained, to real going for refuge, when we are non-returnable on the path towards enlightenment. So it's just the context for us to move there. And each one of us has to take care of this living organism. Sometimes it's so easy to hear about some conflicts or misunderstanding and to think, someone else will look after that. Or I have a misunderstanding or conflict with someone and I'm never addressing it. And maybe worse, talk with others about it without addressing it. But this creating harmony has to be worked on. We are conditioned beings. We all bring our family conditioning, our emotions, our egos to the situations, often not aware which impact we have on a situation. So Sadanandi, an order member from the UK who lives and works in a retreat center, she had an interesting image for this. She talked about a community being like a coral reef. And coral reefs are amazingly beautiful. I don't know if you have ever dived in outside of Australia or somewhere in a coral reef. It's very beautiful. I mean, they're dying as well. But they need to be clean. It needs clear water to survive. So any pollution is really damaging. So in comparing a community to a coral reef, Sadanandi asked, do we know the pollution we bring to a situation? And maybe that's a good question each one of us can ask ourselves for any given context which is of value for us. What pollution do I bring to a situation? How do I show up my ego? And how do I hold it up? And she sort of like did this little exercise. She invited some friends and she asked these questions and she wanted them to engage with her. So she first talked about her strengths and her weaknesses and then she had a chair next to her and she invited just the people, her friends, just to sit next to her and to really tell her. She really wanted to know how she is polluting a situation. I mean, what a brave thing to do. I'm still thinking about it, but I haven't done it yet. It's a bit scary. So I hope I had given you a bit of a taste of this spiritual community. It's nothing fixed, it's changing. It has to be worked on. It depends on each of us individually. And as an order, we also have a symbol. And sometimes symbols speak in a different language. And it's the image of the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion, working for the welfare of all beings. And there's an image of him. He has 11 heads and 1,000 arms. And as an individual, to work for the welfare of all beings, the task is just too big. I can't do it. But as a spiritual community, we have a better chance to do that. So each of us order members is a hand of Avalokiteshvara, and each hand holds a different implement. So each one of us will work on their task in a different way. In 1999, Sanghadarshini gave a talk to the order called Looking Ahead a Little Way. He said, if the order is spiritually united, if it is in harmony, then a truly wonderful thing will happen. The order then will be the locus for the manifestation of the bodhicitta. How to explain what the bodhicitta is? It's this will towards enlightenment. It's this sort of like, if you developed a little bit, it just is like an urge to move forward with everything which is there. So the order then will be the locus for the manifestation of the bodhicitta. As you all know, we sometimes liken the order to the 11-headed and 1,000-armed Avalokiteshvara. But so to speak, it's not just a manner of speaking. It's not just a figure of speech. We should take it very seriously, even take it literally. When a number of people achieve this non-egoistic going for refuge, this non-egoistic arising of the bodhicitta, when that stream of non-egoistic spiritual energy starts manifesting through a number of people simultaneously, those people will be literally hands or arms, even faces of Avalokiteshvara. There will be no question of any conflict between them. They will function in perfect harmony. It will be a true Sangha. It will be an Arya Sangha, and the Triratna Buddhist Order has a future only to the extent that it is such a Sangha, or to the extent that it contains such a Sangha at its nucleus. It is therefore imperative that each and every one of you should seek to transform your effective going for refuge into real going for refuge, should seek to attain stream entry or the arising of the real bodhicitta. And then he said, it's up to you. The future of the order, of the movement, is in your hands. So if we just become like an organization, sort of like, I don't know, not practicing, just sort of like looking after the running of a Buddhist center or the running of, I don't know, the institutions, we won't survive. So hopefully we take this quite seriously. So I'm going to end the talk with another quote by Sanghadarshini about being involved in a spiritual community. So it could be any spiritual community. If one's inner experience finds a collective expression in some kind of spiritual movement, one could think of that movement as having a dream life or a myth life of its own. Perhaps it does have an existence on another level. Indeed, if it did not, if it were merely an organization on the material plane, it would wither away very quickly. It needs to have very deep roots, roots in the sky. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this talk, you are warmly invited to visit Buddhistisches Tor Berlin in Kreuzberg. We offer meditation, Dharma talks, and courses that support practice in everyday life. You'll find more information in the episode description.